Well, welcome. This is the Kitsap Sun's editorial board. We're talking to Central Kitsap Fire and Rescue Chief Scott Weninger and board commissioner.
I am the board chair.
The board chair, Dave Fergus.
Fire commissioner.
Yep. And you guys are here to talk about two different ballot measures, the Proposition 1 on the bond and Proposition 2 on the M&O levy. So why don't we'll turn it over to you and kind of give us an overview and give the background.
So the fire district's ability to provide service within the community is based off three different components. One would be people, one would be equipment, and one would be facilities. And over time, operating a fire district has become more expensive. With the recession that occurred, we had 6 years of reducing revenues and increasing costs. And the fire district has made some adjustments, but as you know, all fire districts in the county are having issues and going to the voters to ask for help to be sustainable. So the three districts in the north went, I believe, in April, and those were successful with the voters, and now the three fire districts, fire departments in the south are doing the same. So South, Central, and Bremerton are all asking the voters for assistance. Basically, Proposition 1 is a bond. It deals with the stuff, the apparatus. Our personnel need chariots to get us from point A to point B and do the work of the fire district. Those chariots are very expensive now. Fire engines range just under $600,000. I think our most recent estimate is $580 something. And that is not an equipped fire engine. That is a fire engine that has pretty much empty compartments on it. So maintaining rolling stock is really expensive. Rolling stock is replaced as we can afford it. The standard, the national standard on that is that you use a piece of apparatus for 15 years in frontline service, so it runs every day for 15 years, and then you're supposed to put it in reserve for 10 more. Reserve status is something that's used when you have a big incident, you call back people, so you staff extra vehicles, or it's used only when the frontline piece of apparatus is broken or in for maintenance. So that would be reserve status. And at 25 years, the national standard is that you send that somewhere else to be successful. And that is a firefighter safety thing. It also runs into our Washington State Rating Bureau system rating. We get demerits basically for any apparatus that's outside of that standard. They think it's a reliability issue, a safety issue, et cetera, and an efficiency issue. So even staff cars that are beyond that standard, the fire district receives demerits in their rating. Why is that rating important? Because that rating impacts your fire insurance that you pay in your home or your business. So we try and maintain our rating as best we can. We were just re-rated. We were re-rated a 4. Which was status quo for us. We were thinking that maybe things had changed and we would get closer to a 3, and it wasn't the case. We're still continuing to dig through that, but we did receive.
What's the scale?
The scale is 1, being a class 1 is the best fire department, and a class 10 means that there's no fire department that exists. If you have a class 10 fire insurance, it's very expensive for homes. So, and that's typically out in the rural somewhere where it's way too far from a fire station or actually outside of an existing fire district.
What leads to the 4? Do you know what the factors are?
Yeah, it's a whole book on that, and so it's very, very complex rating system, and actually some of that is actually a mystery, and we just sat down with the WSRB head, and he walked us through many, many details of that mystery, and so we're looking to see if there's little changes we can make in our operation to get our rating higher at some point in the future. But one of those things that we learned during this recent review and with him was that we actually got demerits. They don't call it that, they're negative points for the age of some of even our staff cars, and we were unsure why that mattered because we have staff cars in the fleet that don't respond to emergencies that are outside of the standard, and we actually received demerits for that. We're still questioning that. If they don't respond to calls, if they do maintenance on buildings or mow grass, why does it matter that they're outside 25 years? So apparatus is really important. I understand that apparatus is really expensive, and so Proposition 1 replaces fire apparatus and also equipment. And on that that summary sheet, it shows you a 1989 rescue. That rescue was probably state-of-the-art in 1989, and today it doesn't meet our needs. The compartments aren't big enough, it's old, It still is a functioning piece of equipment, but it is time to replace it. The replacement cost on that's around $600,000 new. We've looked at some used ones. It all depends on when we have money as to what we're able to buy.
And this piece would be one of your reserve vehicles right now?
It actually, this vehicle, when the ladder truck is out of service for maintenance or damage or something, this is what we run as a backup ladder truck. It doesn't have a ladder on it, but it is a functioning heavy rescue, and it carries much of the same equipment that a ladder truck does, minus the ladder. One of the things that's going on in Silverdale is there's tremendous growth that's going on. The hospital's going to build. We're going to have more high-rise capabilities within the community, and so the fire district needs to respond to that. The replacement heavy rescue will be a little larger vehicle, and it will have equipment to allow us to respond to high-rise type of situations that require more sustained air supply and different types of equipment. And so that's why that's pretty important. The fire district is really at a crossroads with a couple of things. And one, we need to figure out how we're going to be a sustainable agency into the future given all the limitations that are out there. Our demand is up. We had a 10.8, 10.9% increase. It's almost 11% increase in 2014 of call volume. So our volume is going up, and at the same time we reduce staffing due to budgetary constraints. So when staffing goes down and call volume goes up, that's a recipe for disaster. So far in 2015, we've seen a 7% increase in call volume. So the bond measure, Proposition 1, is really a request to the public to adequately fund our apparatus plan. So we took 7 years of apparatus and cooked it into a 5-year plan, accelerated a little bit. Said if we're going to go ask the public, we're going to try and condense that best we can. And we've made our estimates of what apparatus will cost over the next 7 years. We've put it into a 5-year bond, and if we're blessed with this, we will probably accelerate that purchasing slightly ahead of that 7-year schedule. But it's a 5-year payback on what we...
and you're doing that because of growth impacts?
I
mean, why compressed it? Why compressed it?
One of the things that we don't want to do is go to the public too often. And so when we go, we want to have a refined plan that says, here's what we're going to buy over this time frame. And so we've listed out. And the problem that you have is that fire apparatus is not driving down to the dealership and picking out a new Chevy. They're all custom made. They come out of factories all over in the U.S. And it's typically about 1.5 or 2 years from the time you say, let's buy fire apparatus, until you see it show up and it's actually responding on calls. And it could be slightly longer than that, depending on how that all transpires. So it's about 2 years, and it's hard to anticipate what the cost of that apparatus will be the day we purchase it. Because first it has to be designed, and then it has to be, you have to go out to bid, and then when you find a bidder that's going to build it for you, and then you agree on the price, and then you still don't see it for so much longer. And it's just like building a house. During the build process, something changed, and you've got some slight changes in the cost. Custom apparatus, all fire apparatus is pretty much custom, and that's the way that process works. So it's really hard to know exactly what it's going to cost the day we buy apparatus.
Can I just ask you something? Since
Sure.
you're saying all the southern districts are going out, and we've talked to some of them, why is it all custom? Why can't you sort of, all go in together? Buy these?
Well, if all the fire districts needed exactly the same thing and they were all designed to the same exact spec and it met our needs, you could probably get it's just like if you buy 2 fire engines, you typically get a better price than if you buy 1. Each fire district has slightly different needs. The city of Bremerton runs a total urban service, so a city fire pumper is designed slightly different than something would be out in Sept, for example. Out on Sept Highway at Station 56, the fire engine out there would be dramatically different. And then a lot of our fire stations are really small, so the fire engines that are in there are custom built to fit in those fire stations. They're a smaller version. So you just can't take one fire engine off the shelf and do that. But pretty much my experience is that every fire engine is basically custom. If you're blessed and you're doing a bunch at the same time, you can order a cookie cutter and get a better deal. But it just depends on the situation and what you're looking at.
Chief, even logging trucks and the like are built in. They're kind of more or less custom built engine from the engines.
Yeah.
And same idea.
Yeah, they probably all are a little different. It's it's pretty unique. It's just like if our shop works on Cummins motors and Watrous pumps, then we probably want to specify Cummins motor and Watrous pump. But there's probably a dozen different manufacturers across the country that build fire engines, and you can specify a Cummins motor and a Watrous pump, and then they'll build that to your specs.
Wouldn't you still have a better bargaining position if you went together with others, and even though there were these variations?
Absolutely. If you want to get really into the controversial stuff, one county fire department would be more efficient than everybody doing their own, because that's the kind of stuff that would go on. We would buy in bulk. So there you go.
Do you have a boat now?
We do. It's a 1984 Avon, I believe, is the brand. It is an inflatable boat with a hard fiberglass bottom. And 1984, it's been repaired several times, and it has a leak in it, and we can't find it. And so we pump it up every couple days. The replacing the boat is one of the things on the bond.
Well, you're surrounded by a lot of water.
We have some water.
So you
yes.
get a lot of use?
I'm going to say 5 to 10 times a year the boat rolls out, and it makes a difference. We've had a couple of those this year. Our boat is a trailable boat. Some of the fire districts run a boat that floats in the water all the time. We have lakes and different entry points that we would throw ours in, and we also have a cooperative agreement with the sheriff in Sept for use of their boat. We're still working on training. They have a 32-foot, which is way too big to trailer. So the little boat that we have, I think it's 16 feet maybe.
So what are you getting?
I don't know. I've heard a couple of different things. One is we could look at exactly what we have now, which seems to function. It's actually a little small. We have some space constraints on where it's parked. It's nice to have your boat hooked up to the truck and ready to go. I've heard that we might want an aluminum boat with a drop bow on it, so we've looked at that, and we've got a couple different options, and until we have money secured, I can't tell you exactly what we'll be buying, but it'll be similar to what we have, similar in size, and it will be trailerable. That I know. It's not going to be a yacht.
So you're asking for a specific amount of money, but I just heard you say that until we know if we have money, it'd be hard to figure out what we want to buy. I know one thing the voters always want to know is they want to know what they're getting for their money.
Sure.
Do you have a specific list of equipment that's going to be replaced?
Yeah,
'Cause
absolutely.
according to this, it just says kind of equipment like.
Yeah. So the fire district maintains a 10-year apparatus plan. And so what that plan is it basically looks at a fire engine, like here's engine 41, let's see, let's not use that one. Here's engine 41. Engine 41 says they're going to replace it in 2023. Today's value is $582,000. When it's replaced in 2023, it's going to cost, estimated, $766,000. So what this is that, and I can't remember the formula, but I'm going to say it's 4%. The fire apparatus goes up about 4% a year. So we can change this whenever something's going to be replaced, and it automatically calculates for inflation. So what we did is took about 7 years of the plan, condensed it into a 5-year bond, and we have an estimate of exactly what we're going to buy and what it'll cost, and that's how we got to that.
What are those pieces of equipment? Can you just kind of run down the list?
Yeah. So it's a, let's see, looks like we're going to put a gurney lift in an ambulance. We're going to replace an ambulance. We're going to buy a boat. We're going to buy a boat tow vehicle, replace that rescue that's in that picture, facilities truck for our facility maintenance person to drive, another ambulance. We're looking at the breathing apparatus that we use. We're looking at a compressor, and at some point we're going to have to replace all of our breathing apparatus, which is around an $800,000 process. That our stuff currently comes to expire in 2018. So in 2017 we're going to have a huge expense.
The apparatus.
The breathing apparatus itself, the tanks and
those
the
will all
masks.
expire in 2018.
Yeah, they have the manufacturers have gotten involved in expiration dates, kind of like milk in your refrigerator. So the turnout clothing that we wear that's in the photo, when I started in the fire service, we used to use it until it wasn't serviceable. And so what that meant was you cleaned it, you took care of it, and you used it till it wasn't serviceable. The manufacturers that make this stuff got involved, and they decided that turnout clothing, no matter how old it is or what good a shape it is, at 10 years it expires. So now the standard is you don't have your people in turnouts that are 11 years old. 10 years, done. Helmets, same thing. Whether it's ever been impacted by a piece of metal or it doesn't matter, at 10 years it goes away. So turnouts have to be replaced. And the issue with turnouts is that with cancer that's going on now in the fire service, it's a huge issue. When a firefighter is exposed to something at a fire, we need to basically bag their stuff, wash the person and the gear, and put them into new gear so they can go back to doing their job. We currently do not maintain 2 sets of turnouts for every employee. Turnouts are really expensive, and so part of the bond is to buy a second set of gear for our firefighters, and we would try and stagger those at maybe a 4-year, 5-year interval so that we don't have them all coming up at the same time. Those are all custom made, they're custom measured for the person, just like a fire engine, and they're really expensive. And we also, every once in a while, we get somebody in too hot and we destroy or need repairs on our gear, so that's really expensive. Another thing that's on the bond is the MCTs, that's the mobile computer terminals. So every fire engine has a computer in it that tells, it's hooked to 911 dispatch, it tells them where they're going, you know, the street address, it has mapping, and it tells them exactly what they're getting themselves into. It's this type of a medical call, it's this type of a fire call, we've had this many, it's really important for firefighter safety and for our efficiency to get where we're going. That whole system is being replaced countywide, and we estimated when we started this bond that it was going to occur in 17. We know now that it's going to happen in March of 16, I think it is, or April of 16. So that time frame has accelerated just since we did this work. We have a water tender. It's basically a big milk truck or a gas truck that hauls water back and forth in the unhydrated areas. So we have one of those that's listed, another ambulance. Grounds vehicle is basically a pickup that's got an elaborate box on the back so that we can do our lawn maintenance stuff. And then in here we list portable radios. So the walkie-talkies that we talk on, really important for firefighter safety, and there's a bunch of changes going on across the nation in the ability to talk. And we think that our whole fleet of portable radios will have to be replaced sometime during this bond. That's $300 grand, that's a big expense.
The 25 years and 15-year standards, national standards, is that something that's relatively new, or has that been around for a long time? A lot of the fire districts are all replacing a lot of equipment seems all at the same time, and I'm wondering how is that by chance, or is that because the rules changed?
Well, you know, we bought a bunch of apparatus in 2008, and that's like that was just yesterday, right? But that 2008 stuff we're starting to talk about when it's getting to its life expectancy, and one of the things you want to do is to pull stuff out of service when it's still useful so that it functions well in that reserve capacity. That standard's been around for a long time. It's not an absolute. It's not like the earth stops spinning if you run something that's over 25 years. We actually have that heavy rescue and other things that I go to the board each year and say, these vehicles are at their expiration date. Are you okay with us running them for another year? And the board says yes. They actually sign a piece of paper and sign off on that, and we run it for another year. If somebody dies in that heavy rescue, that spouse is going to come to the fire district and want to know why we were running a vehicle that was outside of the national best practice standards.
How many vehicles do you think are running outside that right now?
I don't have that exact list, but we have it because it's done by board action each year. And if I was guessing, I'd say 6 to 8.
Okay, 6 to 8
of our
is that
fleet.
only engines?
No, it's all vehicles that are outside of the best practice standards. I'd have to pull it and get it, but I'd say it's somewhere in that neighborhood. We have a ladder truck scheduled. Ladder truck is over $1 million to replace. We have another fire engine. When it's scheduled on here, it's over $700,000, and then another fire engine that's again over $700,000.
How much does the technology change in the, well, I mean, I was thinking like on this protective gear or heaven forbid your computer system.
Sure. Everything changes every day, and so the thing is for us is we don't want to be on that bleeding edge of technology where we really want to be as proven stuff that's every, you know, somebody else has went first and made the mistakes, and we're buying proven technology. The technology changes all the time. The gear that we wear, the turnout clothing itself has gotten much more sophisticated to protect firefighters from heat. So that is actually a good thing. I think every time you buy something, it's better, it's upgraded. Just like your car. When you buy a car, it's got more airbags, more safety features in it. Same thing, fire engines have gotten much more sophisticated. And so when you buy a new fire engine, it is state-of-the-art safety equipment. And you know, it's those of you that have been around a while know that when you have a 57 Chevy, there's not a lot of stuff that can go wrong, right? You change the spark plugs and that's nowadays the fire engine. And you can do it yourself. And nowadays we buy really elaborate scopes to talk to the fire engines. The mechanics are very sophisticated in their ability to talk to the electronics on the computerized systems. And one of them was telling me how many computer relays he has to unhook before they do something like weld on a fire engine, because you can cause all this damage to all these systems. So the 57 Chevy was really easy to work on. Fire engines today are very, very complex and lots of computer systems on them. So
but
that's
you
why
have to
they
get
cost
these guys
money.
trained after you get this.
Absolutely. They go both the firefighters and the mechanics to maintain it, certainly.
I have a question about the way that the cost to the property owner was calculated.
Mhm.
Are you including such improvements as the trails, the new shopping center? Have you estimated what the revenue will be from that?
Yeah.
And other projects that are underway?
Great question. So we'll get our assessed value in, I believe, November. So this was based off of the estimates that the assessor gave us previously. Now, those projects been in play for a long time. July 31st is when they take their snapshot, the assessor does, and then sets that on what the value was. So the trails or any other project that's in process, it was frozen in time on July 31st as far as the tax assessor is concerned for the 2016 year. So I don't know exactly, but I'm going to bet that these numbers were based off of the assessed value that the fire district had, plus the estimate that the assessor gave us moving forward. And those are guesses until late in November when we get the real number. And I think it actually is subject to change all the way into like February. I think it changes incrementally. It usually is pretty close after the November, but that was probably best guess at the time that was done.
Your fire district, it does have reserve funds, and you would, it's part of your budget process to annually put money in there, is that correct?
Well, that would be our policy, would be to put money into our reserves.
Have you been doing that? Has it been?
The last 2 years, we've not put any new money into our reserves. We've actually been spending money out of the reserves to purchase apparatus and purchase equipment. The finances of the district, that is the highest priority for the Board of Commissioners as far as monitoring and improving, and we take that pretty seriously, obviously. So we've put into place a lot of policies like the 10-year replacement plan for our vehicles that the chief was sharing with you. That's a rolling 10-year plan, so we're looking 10 years out, always 10 years out, not just looking at the next year or the next 2 years. We're really looking long range. And the idea of that as an example is that you would put money into reserves so that you have money to buy these pieces of equipment. The last few years, we just haven't been able to do that. All the districts really have had declining assessed values. Like all the other districts, we rely on property taxes as our primary source of revenue. And with 6 straight years in Central Kitsap of declining assessed values, it's taken a big hit on our operating budget. So we just simply have not had money to feed the reserve. So our reserve funds have been declining. They have been going down.
Do you know what they are like right now?
I do. I just actually had the finance manager send that to me because I realized I didn't have a copy. But we spent in 2014 $709,000 out of reserves.
Okay.
And the reserves were primarily spent to deal with apparatus and facility issues. And we did our best to try not to mix that into people stuff, into personnel. And I think we're fairly successful. So a majority of that was spent on deferred maintenance in our buildings and also with the fleet.
And that's been consistent with the policy. The reserve money only goes towards capital.
Well, we have 2 reserves. We have a reserve account that's specific for apparatus and equipment, and then we have a reserve account that is for facilities. So they're two separate things, and we monitor both of those carefully.
We also have a reserve account that is set up for liabilities, and one of the liabilities of the fire district is when we have a retirement, any balances that need to be paid off, annual leave, vacation, that kind of stuff. It comes out of that reserve account, and so we did have in the last couple of years some retirements that did hit that count. it's smaller than, I mean, a majority of it was spent on facilities. In 2015, we're again spending reserve funds. I don't know exactly where we'll land for the year, but I would say it's gonna be similar. That we're gonna spend 500 to 700,000 out of reserves. Again, we won't know that till the books close, like by February, but we've got some big facilities projects that we're working on.
That was what I was gonna ask. So right now, that reserve, that capital money is being spent mostly on, is it stations, station upgrades and maintenance, things like that?
Maintenance,
Maintenance?
Yeah, we have.
purely maintenance.
Yeah, we've had some deferred maintenance. When things got tight, we started deferring maintenance in the facilities, and I think I talked about that the last time we
Yeah, I
were here,
remember.
and we've cleaned up a lot of that, so, but we're still working on it.
In that 10-year projection, are there major facility needs that you're seeing right now?
We have actually sold a fire station. We closed and sold a fire station, and we have another fire station that's transitioned to a different use. So we've actually removed 2 working fire stations from the district's ongoing requirements to maintain fire stations. But the maintenance stuff, we put together a 5-year deferred maintenance plan, and I can't remember what year we're in, if we're in 3 or 4, but it pretty much would catch most of the big stuff. We're into some stuff this year that's really expensive, and I think the last couple have been expensive. So I don't know I don't have that memorized.
You are close then to a period where you guys are gonna start looking at the next 5 years. Am I understanding?
We're always looking out long-term on the capital facilities. This bond measure does not include any of those big projects,
Yeah.
like a new fire station.
Right.
That is completely outside.
I guess that's what
this.
I'm wondering. Is that something that you do see?
We are, and the district actually, this last year, bought a piece of property out on the Anderson Hill Road in anticipation of a fire station in the future. Because as Silverdale grows, we need another station out on that side to help balance out the response characteristics. But that's beyond 4 years, that's out farther distance, and the growth in the district and the increase in call volume, all of that needs to be in check with when you build those facilities. And we're planning ahead, we're thinking long-term, so we're buying land to be prepared, but we're not putting any money toward that other than what money we have in reserves right now, but it's certainly not enough for that kind of a project.
Where is that property on the Anderson Hill Road?
It's the corner of Anderson Hill and Olympic View. It's the
Just read that.
northeast corner, right across from where all the work's being done.
All that
If
new
you're driving up there.
construction.
Yeah, right across the street from that, we own the corner there. It's 2.65 acres with a home on it, and we've been looking at it for a long time, and it finally came available, so,
It's 2.5 miles from my house.
yeah.
Can't
Well,
go
it's,
fast enough.
yeah. That will be a replacement station, not a new station. It will replace the station that's out at the end of Olympic View. I think the last time I was here, I talked about some of our facility stuff. That was a great place for a fire station when that was a through road.
Right,
Now that
right.
Banger's there, it's kind of not in the best place, and it's also very small. And so we have special fire engines that go in those really small stations that were built, I don't remember, like in the 60s or 50s or something. So
That's pretty old.
it's an old, a lot of our
Yes.
buildings are old,
Yeah.
yes, so.
With the big ticket items on that list that you ran down, I would assume those are the ladder truck, the engines, those are the
Yeah.
ones that are on the bigger end.
Yeah,
Where are those at in lifespan
in
for you
lifespan.
guys right now? Are they,
They're
are
they're
they,
late in this plan. They're 2019 and 20. The issue for the fire district is that if the bond is approved and we go into speccing the stuff that we're gonna buy, there may be a reason to defer 1 year and buy multiple the next year in the plan. And so as the bond, if the bond money becomes available, we'll want to relook at the timing of how we're gonna replace. Just like you said, there's an advantage to buying multiple units at the same time versus one each year as the plan laid out, so.
Chief, excuse me, could you send a copy of the fact sheets down? for
You betcha.
registration?
Sorry. It's okay.
Thank you.
So you
Is there any bonds that are retiring, or how many bonds are still out there?
The fire district doesn't have
We're bond
any
free
debt.
right now.
We
Bond
actually,
free.
the debt that we have currently is I'm gonna say 4 years ago maybe, bought new life pack monitors. The things that jumpstart hearts, they're really expensive. I'm gonna say 35,000 a piece, and we had to buy several of them, and we leased those. It was a better option at that time, and I think it's either in 15 or 16 is our last lease payment. So we're in debt like for $60,000 or something like that. That's the full debt, I believe, of the fire district is that lease. So.
And the levy, is that replacing something?
You want to turn to the levy and talk about that?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I talked about that our ability to provide service when you call 911 is based off three things: people, chariots, and facilities. And we've talked a little bit about facilities and about the stuff that we need, the apparatus, et cetera. The maintenance and operation levy is about the people part. And the fire district has done some projections into the future to try and take a guess on what our future looks like. And we had what we called an economic summit where we brought in an outside facilitator and we got together as a group and we started trying to project where are we headed based off the recession and everything that the fire district had experienced, where are we headed. And so we started making estimates as far as what we would look like in 16, 17, 18, and 19 based off trends. So we took trends, everything that we'd seen in the past, and we carried those forward and said, where are we going to be? Trends on revenue, trends on expenses, trends on personnel costs, diesel, everything that we could predict, and we ran it all forward. And our finance manager did a great job of melting it down to where are we going to be based off what we know. And her estimate was that we were going to be about $150,000 short in 2016, about $550,000 short in 2017. In 18, we were going to be just under $1 million short. And in 2019, we're going to be $1.4 million short. And that's in the overall budget. Now that doesn't anticipate building stuff, like any type of construction, and it doesn't deal with anything other than the really routine maintenance on apparatus. So it's not like we were buying vehicles and telling you we're going to be short. This was basically our operating budget. And so we started talking about that. We've made some tough decisions in the past. We shut down our fire prevention division. We used to have 3 full-time employees that did prevention. We laid off the 2 inspectors in January of this year, actually in December, I guess, of last year. And that was probably $450,000 or $500,000 a year that the fire district cut from their budget. Not because it was something pleasant to do. It was something that we decided we had to do to focus on our core mission, which is answering those 911 calls when you call. The county is responsible for fire prevention, and so we gave that back to them. And probably, it's not ideal, but it is what it is, and that's what we did. We also cut $500,000 out of overtime. So there's about $1 million that we've cut out of the budget, and that $500,000 in overtime resulted in less people per day being on duty. Our minimum is now 17, and so when we don't have adequate people, the Chico Fire Station isn't staffed that day with career staff. It still has volunteers assigned, but the response times have suffered almost 3 minutes, 2 minutes and some seconds ever since we did that. It wasn't ideal. It was something that we had to do to try and balance the budget. Even with those, if we carry our stuff forward, not replacing that and putting that stuff back, but just carrying our existing operating mode forward, we're predicting shortfalls. So the M&O is actually a chance for the public to interject before we make more tough decisions. That's what's ahead for the fire chief and the board, is balancing the budget and making those tough decisions, us getting smaller over time. The 1% limitation, and I say that we haven't been able to necessarily collect the 1% for several years, so we've been dealing with less, and our call volume's going up, we have less revenues, and people is really what's expensive. People are 82 to 84% of our budget annually, and if we have less people, we have less people on duty to do things. So we've been trying to prepare the fire district to get lean in the future. We've been trying to catch up all the maintenance and fully realize that we may not be able to sustain even what we're doing today. So this is a chance for the public to say, we want you to be here, we want you to not only be what you are today, but a little bit better. We're thinking we might be able to add ever so slightly a little bit of capacity and really hold our own into the future. It still is not going to increase the size of the organization to probably meet the demand of the future. But at least it kind of keeps us semi-status quo with a hope to be just a little bit better than we are now.
Where does the 1.8 million, I hear what you're saying, it's gonna bring back slightly some of that, but some of the shortfalls you described, it seems like there would be a considerable amount of money some years, especially
Yeah.
the initial years,
Yeah.
there would be a big infusion.
Yeah, so the 1.8, if I said we were gonna be short 1.4, and I can tell you, we did these calculations, it's been a little while now, so it might have been last spring. So, I mean, it seems like it's really dated now. We just received notification from our current health insurance provider of a 28% rate increase. Now, the fire district can't stomach a 28% rate increase, so we're headed into negotiations with our union about health insurance, which is a really difficult topic. So these predictions were made, the shortfall was made off of, maybe an 8% rise in health care a year, which is probably still difficult to stomach, but that's I think the trend line that we were using. So we also experienced a 23%, I think, increase in our labor and industries insurance last year, which was like $75,000 plus more than the year previous. And those are things that are outside our control. We're a consumer, and we don't get to create those things. So with all that, 1.8 million probably makes us whole status quo in the 4th year, and we need less, and so it balances all out that we think that we can add a little bit of capacity and hold our own for the whole period. And we've done some calculations on what that looks like and how many firefighters or staff we might be able to hire, but it's all a guess based off of what the ongoing costs are. Every year during budget time, we get these really great surprises from different people that we have to adjust for. And based off what things cost, that tells us what we can do and what we can't. So,
Are you worried about, earlier you were saying how you're trying to plan for that sustainable future and stuff, and I mean, this is kind of what school districts live with. Are you worried that this is gonna be something that, 4 years from now, it doesn't sound like you're in a different situation, right?
Yeah. Our planning says that there's enough that we can get us by for 4 years providing the service that we do now. It's not going to be dramatically better, not be dramatically less. It's about the status quo, give or take. And if the public says no, and that's their choice, if they don't support this, then the fire district will need to continue down that path of making the tough decisions and reduce the amount of service or people that are available based off the priorities of the fire district. So really, it's a choice of the public. If you want us here, we're not going to be able to sustain the service that you've come to enjoy. We've already made those cuts, and I'm not sure that they've noticed it. We statistically have seen extended response times in the Chico area, and you may have seen some of that dialogue that has perked up from time to time. But we've seen it, and we know that it will get worse over time. As we get busier, our response times will get longer, and that's just kind of the fact.
Yeah, I'm trying to get at how if you're fortunate to get the help for this 4 years, is there something in here that says, here's how we're going to use this money so we don't have to come and run another M&O just to replace it? Or does this put you down into kind of what we've seen with school districts, is once they get on M&O levies,
then you're on.
You have to be on one.
I strongly suspect that in 4 years, we'll need to do another M&O levy.
Yeah.
And I think we acknowledge that, and we know that going into it. But again, it's a choice of the public. When our primary source of revenue is property tax, and we're limited to what we have, and we've cut back everywhere where we can, we really have no choice but to go back out and ask if the public is willing to spend some more. And
In a best case scenario with the development that's going on and the increase in property values, is that a foregone conclusion?
that we would have to go out again?
Yeah.
No, it's not a foregone
It's not.
conclusion.
I mean, what's your feeling? I mean, you've got a development that's like opposite, the property you got for the fire station, you got a lot of new homes there, you got the trails, and property values are going up.
Yep. Yeah, so the issue is that we're limited to 1% growth in AV plus new construction. And new construction, kind of like the trails, it will come on, maybe part of that value will come on in 16 and the rest will come on in 17 when the project is complete. I think the hospital, if they break ground, and that's been all delayed. I mean, they said they were gonna break ground in June. This is September. Nobody's got a shovel out there yet. So when that happens, it's gonna change Silverdale. I mean, it's gonna be a huge magnet to draw their stuff. But the hospital project, even if it's $1 billion project, and I have no idea what that might be worth, it's a non-profit or not-for-profit, and they won't pay taxes. Now, the Trails is a tax agency, but many of our big retirement homes that we go to all the time don't pay taxes. So growth is good, depending on what kind of growth it is. If we get more retirement communities that are non-profit or not-for-profit agencies, we get more demand for service and we get no revenue. The more stuff that the housing authority buys and turns into public housing stuff that's taken off the tax rolls, I mean, that's demand for service without additional revenue. So there is a balance there. There's other models out there, benefit service charge. Some communities in the state have went in a different direction. That may allow the district to get rid of an M&O in the future if we went to a different kind of a fee schedule. That's a pretty complex situation, and we'd be in front of this board trying to explain that to you. And I can tell you that I am not an expert on that, and we would need to really drill into that before we brought it to you and said, hey, we want to proceed this. But there's other funding mechanisms out there. There's other revenue streams that might be pursued. This is the one that we're prepared to come and ask the public for. And again, it's their choice, and if they say no, then we'll adjust to try and do the best we can with a sustainable future. With call volume going up and less people, I can tell you that response times will suffer.
Chief, we talked before when you were here about the calls and the revenue resulting from those calls, and you've had a pretty big increase in your
Yes.
calls. Is that revenue keeping up from transporting people?
So interesting talk. So staff right now, as I'm sitting here, is actually doing the analysis on that. Our call volume is up. We also changed collection agencies, I should say billing agencies, for our ambulance transports. And our ambulance transport income is actually up for 2015. Now, it's been falling off for years. We've made some changes. We've changed some software. Now we've changed our billing agent. And for whatever reason, our income from ambulance transports is trending up now. And if it continues through 15 as it's trending, it looks like we're going to finish above what was budgeted income. But we're still trying to figure out why the anomaly. And part of that was we were told that we had some delayed accounts, or what do they call them, past due accounts, that we were able to make headway on. So we're trying to figure out if it's a one-time anomaly, a bump, or if it really is a trend. But yes, call volume goes up, that the number of transports goes up. You also have collection issues, and so it's hard to know when we're putting together the budget what the forecast is. We're always, in February, I can tell you exactly what happened the year before, but when we put together a budget for 16, we're guessing on revenue and guessing on expenses. We get close, but it's not exact science until we close the books in February and look back.
Chief, we've been talking, we mentioned we've been talking to other, you know, it seems like most of the districts. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. And this is really strictly to educate me, because I know there's probably many differences between central Kitsap and south Kitsap. But they cover a similar square mile. They have similar in population, but they have only 72 career or paid employees. And so what makes that difference with you having 98?
Oh, great question.
Yeah, what is the?
Yeah, I don't think 72 is the total head count at South Kitsap. I would ask that you check with Chief Wright on that. I think their employee count is probably pretty close to ours. We are very similar agencies. They went out and got a SAFER grant, and I'm speaking, I mean, this is all good stuff for you to check with Chief Wright on, but they got a SAFER grant and they hired some people. And when that SAFER grant ended, the tax revenue won't sustain that, and so they've been reducing the number of firefighters that they have.
Right.
Chief Wright and I have spoke quite often, and our sustainable number, the number that we came up with a while back, was way less than what we would like to be.
Oh, absolutely,
yeah.
I'm sure,
So-
but I just thought that was a significant difference, and I'm not understanding.
Yeah, so we have 75 people assigned to fire stations, 25 per day, and I think they might have like 26 assigned per day. But I would ask that you check the numbers with him. The 72 is probably his ideal number of firefighters, and ours is currently 75. And what I think is we may be headed to 72 if the M&O doesn't pass. And the reason I say that is that's a number that he and I have discussed, that may be sustainable based off of
Current revenue.
yeah, where we are. It's not where we currently are, but that's where we may be
Okay.
headed. So when he
Okay.
says 72, I know they've got some attrition that they're doing. They had a lot more people than that. I think they
Right.
were in the 80s at one time, like 82,
mhm.
and I think they're moving to 72. So, but I would ask that you check that and not use my speaking on his behalf. What I can tell you is that we use the term, we have 77 firefighters quite often. That's 75 that are assigned to shifts, 25 per shift, and we have 2 that are assigned to days. Those are the firefighters that are in our union that we use that number, and that's not all inclusive. So we have 99 employees currently. And I think his number is going to be very similar to that.
Okay, thanks.
And one of the suggestions on this fact sheet here is possibly adding folks at Chico.
Yeah, so our
What does that
minimum
look like?
staffing is 17. It used to be 19. And if we continued to staff Chico, it would probably be another 500,000 or 600,000 in overtime. So the way that you avoid overtime is you add more employees so that they're working their regular straight time instead of time and a half overtime, which is way cheaper. So one of the thoughts of the fire district is to hire 3 more firefighters to see what that impact does to overtime. It should make overtime, the current amount, go down that much more. And then to see, really, my plan is to do that and let it settle. Now, hiring employees is all based off board action, and Chair Fergus and his group will tell us whether we're going to do that or not. But the M&O should allow us to hire a few employees, see what that result is, observe what our costs are doing, and try and make predictions into the future. The last thing we want to do is overhire, even if the M&O is successful, so that we can't make 2019 within our given revenues.
There are currently 17 on per shift right now, if I heard that correctly.
17 is the minimum staffing.
17,
So,
okay.
so if we have, if we're at 19 and somebody calls in sick, we run with 18. If we're at 18 and somebody calls in sick, we
Then
run
you're
with
at the
17. If we get down to 15, we hire 2 people on overtime to
That's what
maintain 17.
So a typical shift for you is 19 right now?
Well, there's 25
20.
assigned to each shift.
25.
And then there's vacation, all those different things, and when we get below 17, we hire.
Okay.
And so if we put on some more people on regular salary, our overtime statistically will go down. It's really hard for the fire chief to predict how many people will get hurt on the job, hurt off the job, have babies, all the things that are out there in the world that leave has been blessed with. Those all make it difficult to determine how many people will show up for work today. And so we need to provide you a certain level of service. The board has said 17. So when we drop to 16, we hire 1. And that puts us at 17 as a minimum. Somebody gets hurt during the shift or goes home during the shift sick, we hire to maintain 17 currently. Ideally, we were at 19. As the fire chief, I'd love to have 30 on duty every day, and so would every other fire chief. We just can't do that. People are expensive. So
How many years has it been 17 as your standard?
we went
When did we
to
drop that?
19 for 2
Oops.
years, I think. And now we're back to 17, I think it was the beginning of 14.
Okay. So, but 17 was kind of historic before that?
It was 17 for a long time.
That has-
Yeah,
okay.
and then we went to 19, I think, for about 2 years, and now we're back to 17.
Okay.
And if those numbers are right, 72 puts us down around 15.
Well, what about
to
your level
maintain.
of paramedics?
Yeah, great question. So the fire district has traded out some firefighters for medics. We used to have 15 medics, which was 5 per shift, so 15 total. We now have 19 medics.
Much more expensive.
A little bit more, but so there's lots of things. If you have somebody that normally drives a fire engine and they call in sick, there's somebody else that is trained to drive a fire engine, and we can have them step up. If somebody is qualified to be an officer for the day and an officer is gone, we can have somebody step up and serve as an officer that day. You cannot have an EMT step up and pretend to be a medic for the day. It doesn't work that way. It's a state certification thing. It takes us about 6 months to get an experienced medic certified to operate in Kitsap County. There's no faking being a medic. It's a
Is that
state.
like a physician's assistant or
Well,
close to? Or-
it's they do wonderful things out in the field. So if you, I don't know if you've seen our defibrillators, but they are a very complex device. It's not
Okay,
like an
yes.
AED. This is a defibrillator, and then we carry a multitude of equipment and medications to help people feel better and fix their immediate problems. And we do it every day, and we're really good at it. So they're not a physician's assistant. They're a certified paramedic in the state of Washington. The continued education, it is a huge curriculum. And once somebody says they've got a paramedic certificate, you can tell that they're a pretty sharp person, because you just can't trip into that.
What's the percentage of medical calls to fire?
Probably in the mid-70s, like 75% of what we do is medical anymore. And some of it is, bumps and bruises, low-end EMT type stuff,
Sure.
but some of it is medics. So we maintain 3 medics per day, but we have at least 6 on each shift, so that we can always maintain 3. Paramedic overtime was hurting us, and so we put on a few more medics. Again, you can't fake that. You can't pretend to be a medic for the day. It's a 6-month process to get Dr. Davern, who's the county medical physician, to sign off somebody that he trusts them with his license to treat you in an emergency. And so that's a big deal. And that's why we changed out from a few firefighter EMTs to firefighter medics. It is slightly more expensive to maintain them, but it's way cheaper than paying lots of overtime to paramedics, which is what we were doing.
Go ahead. Sorry, it's late coming in. 2 questions. One, what has changed over the years that's making, because it's not just here, even friends that I know in different states say the same thing, that a lot of fire departments are coming about levies and stuff like that. What has changed over the years that's making that now more evident? And the second question is, do you think that there's something that needs to be done now on the legislative level to bring some notice to you guys on whatever has been changed financially?
Great question. So the good old days, I always loved those. The good old days. So manufacturers got involved in our business. And so the capitalist society, and I'm not going to knock it, I'm just going to tell you how it really works. If I sold turnout gear for firefighters, I was really involved in the best practice standards, and I said 10 years they got to expire. So that wasn't always the case, and you got apparatus manufacturers now that are out there, and they are getting really involved in national standards that make the apparatus more expensive. So we've got people that have figured out the system, got involved in the system, and bottom line, it makes our business more expensive. I'm not saying it's bad, I'm just saying it's a cost of, it's made business more expensive. So in the good old days, the fire chiefs or the fire department would determine, what kind of trucks we were going to buy and what kind of breathing apparatus we were going to buy and when we could afford to replace that. And now we have outside forces telling us when that's going to happen. So that's one thing. The other thing that happened is the initiative system that changed the tax structure from 6% growth to 1% growth has a dramatic impact on public agencies all across the state. Now that happened not just in this state, but other states did the same thing. They kind of reeled back that freewheeling growth that was out there. 1%, I can tell you, is not sustainable. Over time, there'll be less public agencies unless there's some other revenue source, because property taxes at 1% growth, even with new construction, is not going to keep us status quo. So you're going to see, I was out at the Navy League and spoke out there, and they said, Chief, we're seeing more and more stuff on the ballot. Why is that? Can you fix this so you come less often? And I said, just the opposite's going to happen. The fire districts are all going to have to come more often, because the strategy of the tax change was that we're just gonna pay for the run-of-the-mill operating budget, and if you want anything big, you're gonna have to come and ask. So if you want a fire station, if you want a fire engine, if you want something, you're gonna have to come and ask for it. The fire district in the old days, CKF&R, very conservative, paid for all that stuff out of their general fund. Because they were growing, having reserves, and being very conservative on what they spent for operating costs. And we built a $4 million fire station. Was there a bond on Station 56?
I think there was a bond.
Was there a bond? Okay, but anyhow, the fire district had much more revenue to operate out of the.
But they were commissioner bonds. They weren't voter approved bonds.
So
the district funded it themselves.
Okay, yeah. So my point is that we were able to handle that out of our operating budget without coming and asking the public. In today's era, you're going to see more and more fire districts coming and asking, and the public will get that choice. And that was some of the logic of the initiative was, if you want something big, come and ask for it, and we'll tell you yes or no. So that is the new reality. Those are a couple of things. I mean, there's lots of stuff being discussed and talked about as far as the future of the 1%. We're hearing, somebody said, hey, 1% plus CPI, would that be more realistic? Well, yeah, I mean, it probably would be better than a 1%. Some of the way it was written, we haven't even been able to get our 1% increase, so it's just life as it is. So we're doing the best we can with what we've got.
What's your feeling about running these at the same time? Were you at a place where you needed to do that, or did you want to do that? Was that seen maybe as an advantage, put them both in front of people?
Well, after we ran the analysis and said, hey, we're going to be short looking into the future, so we're going to have to change our operation to meet those restrictions, and it may not be pleasant. How's that? So we've got tough stuff coming, and what we said was, well, let's put this in front of the public. So the reality is that elections are very expensive. So when we talk about the good old days and today, it's really expensive running an election. So somebody asked why we put 7 years into 5 years. Every time we go for an election, there's an election cost to the fire district, and we have to cover that out of our operating budget. I think in the bond, there's actually some cost recovery for some of the costs of the bonds. I think somewhere's in there we were able to, the bond council and also some of the expense of the bond actually can go into the price of the bond. I guess that's pretty common. But generally the election costs for all this come out of our operating budget. So the more often we go, the more money we're spending for elections, asking the public what they want to do. So we don't want to go every year. That would be ridiculous. And I think, and we never know what the election costs are till afterwards. Again, they give us an estimate and we kind of run with that, and then we find out, it's kind of like closing the books, then you find out what it really costs. I think our estimate for the primary that we just ran for commissioner elections was estimated to be around $100,000 for a commissioner election for a primary. So that comes right out of the public dollar. And when we run in November, it's about the cheapest time to go and ask the public. We're hoping that voter turnout is adequate to give us a result that at least we meet that majority or whatever it is that we need to have to make it a successful election. Regardless of the outcome, you got to have so many turnout, right? And so November is when everybody comes to vote because of the presidential stuff, and it's the cheapest time to go because there's the most stuff on the ballot. So for us, if we ran these at different times, it would just cost the public more money. And the reality is, we need to know now, because if these aren't successful, we need to probably plan differently for 2016 in our operating budget. And again, there'll be difficult choices that are made for the board and the fire chief. So,
well, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate the time.
Thanks for having us. I hope that answered all your questions.
We'll let you know.